Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining our first training course brought to you by 3Pillar Global Product Mindset 101, part of our series, Upskill While You Work From Home. We hope you and your families are staying healthy and safe. My name is Rafa Halawi, and I'm the campaign manager at 3Pillar Global. I wanted to go through some housekeeping items before we get started. All attendees are muted throughout the webinar, but we would love to hear from you. Please type your questions in the questions box on your control panel, and we will be happy to answer any questions at the end of the presentation. If we do not get to your question, you will receive an email with the answer in the next day or two. The webinar is being recorded, and you will receive a link to the recording. You will also receive a copy of the slides, worksheets, and a link to download the ebook. Now, without further ado, I'd love to hand it over to Lindsay Kloepping, Director of Product Strategy at 3Pillar Global.
All right, thank you, Rafa. And welcome, everybody, to the Product Mindset 101. Today's a bit of a crash course to the 3-pillar product mindset. It's an abbreviated version of a full-day workshop that we conduct regularly for our clients. The presentation today is designed to introduce you to the product mindset, to its principles and its values. And throughout our conversation, I will try to highlight examples to help you show where the product mindset can help in your organization. And I have included a few exercises that you can do with your teams to help them understand it as well. There's a copy of our ebook for everybody that attends the session. So at the end of the presentation and the email that Rafa was talking about, there'll be a link to the ebook. And as an added bonus, I've created a workbook full of exercises and techniques that we use with our teams here that will be included in that email as well. And I'll highlight some of them as we go along, but there will be more in the workbook as we go. Like Rafa said, questions are always welcome. We'll leave some time at the end of the presentation, drop them in the question portlet, and if I could figure out how to pat my head and rub my belly all at once and manage all the screens in front of me, I will answer them as we go. But if I don't get to them, we'll definitely take some time at the end. And if we run out of time, then I will send emails to folks so that they have answers. So you may be wondering who I am. Well, I'm your host, Lindsay Kloepping. I'm the Director of Product Strategy for 3Pillar, which really means that I have an army of amazing product people who embody the product mindset and they work day in and day out with our development teams and our clients to build awesome and impactful digital products. I've been with 3Pillar for what feels like eons at this point, but in reality, it's about 7 years in May. I've spent most of my career customer facing, from customer support through project management and then into product management. And most recently, I've kind of straddled the commercial side of our business and the product side. So I've gotten a real good glimpse into how impactful the product mindset can be for organizations. So I'm really, really excited to kind of share that with you today. Our goals for today is to introduce you to the product mindset, to help connect the product mindset to your day-to-day work by providing some examples, and we'll talk through some exercises. I want to try to help identify next steps for you for the product mindset adoption in your organization, and there's some exercises that I included in the workbook that can help you think through, how do I apply this in my world these days? And then lastly is to have fun, because, well, right now we're all kind of stuck inside and at home, so fun, I'll try to inject fun somewhere. I'm a little kooky anyways. So that is a lot to get through in 50 or so minutes. So let's get started. This is the time generally in workshops where I hand you a set of Sharpies and sticky notes and ask you to help me define, first of all, what you think a mindset is, and subsequently what you believe the product mindset to be. And it's always a fun conversation, but it's rather lengthy. And we only have, a certain amount of time here, so I'm going to kind of cut to the chase and help define it for you. So a mindset is a collection of thoughts and values that people hold true and close. They guide how people think, how they ask questions, how they make decisions. They really guide how people approach the world. Mindsets can be held by individuals, but they can also be shared by teams. The 3-pillar product mindset changes the way that these teams think about building digital products to focus on things like business outcomes and creating value for your organization instead of just building features or maximizing the amount of outputs. We teach it here to everyone at 3Pillar, whether you're in HR, finance, or in development. Everyone here learns it. And I've taught it, and a bunch of us teach it globally to organizations outside of 3Pillar. I mean, we even have a book about it, in case you haven't heard. So we believe it's that important. And then you'll probably say, okay, cool, but why? Why is it really that important? Well, because teams with the right mindset can deal with complexity and change. And up on the screen is a quote directly from the book. And I'm going to paraphrase and add some color as we go, so I'm not reading straight to you. But the idea is that teams will constantly learn, improve, and adapt. Instead of being stopped by a problem and getting stuck around the axle whenever something doesn't quite line up, the product mindset encourages them to explore alternatives, to take risks, and to work hard to overcome those adversities and to figure out the answers. So the product mindset encourages entire teams to ask questions and try to understand why. Why are we trying to do this for folks? And you may be saying to yourself, well, that sounds great and awesome and works really well in your world, but my world's not quite like that, or my company doesn't think like that, my team doesn't think like that. Well, I have some good news for you. Minds can change, right? Mindsets can be changed. People's mindsets, companies' mindsets. It's been proven time and time again that people can adopt new mindsets if they try. Is it easy? Not always. Is it worth it? Usually. So in our time today, I will spend some time, I'll spend most of my time telling you about the product mindset, its principles and its values, but more importantly, I will try to give you examples and ideas of how you can start that in your organization, because mindset shifts are not easy. They are cultural, they are wide-reaching, but they can be done, all right? And actually, let me tell you a quick story, because this is a really good example of both kind of where the product mindset came from and why it exists today, and getting a company to change their mindset. So it was 14 years ago when our founder and CEO, David DeWolf, was brought in as a consultant to an organization trying to solve the problem of what they called offshore gone wrong. They had been throwing requirements over to their global teams, and what was coming back from those global teams wasn't useful, wasn't valuable, wasn't what they expected. These guys had not been able to get a release out the door in months. And so David was brought in as a consultant to try to figure out why, what was going on. So he did his analysis, typical people, process, tools, technology. It came to the conclusion that the people were great, smart, knew what they were doing. They knew the product that they were, or the technologies they were trying to use. The process was fine. They used Agile. They were really sound, Scrum House. They knew what they were doing there. The tools and the technology, those are great too. There was nothing wrong with them. What was missing, though, was the connection between the team and the context. So the teams had no idea why they were building what they were building and why they were building it. They were simply doing as they were told and reacting to requirements. And as most folks know, what we say we want and what we actually want don't always align. So I may ask you for something, and when you hand it to me, I'm like, oh, actually, that's not what I wanted, because I interpreted it wrong. And if I didn't tell you the context of why I wanted this, then it's no mystery why they didn't connect. So what David had found is that they lacked the context. They lacked the understanding of what they were building and why that was impactful to the organization. So that's essentially where the product mindset came from. David came down to the fact that these teams needed to understand the outcomes that they were building for. What were we trying to accomplish? What were the goals we were trying to achieve, and how were we trying to impact the business? So at the top of the product mindset, at the kind of the core of the product mindset, is building for outcomes. And we'll talk a lot about outcomes today. When we build for outcomes, we do three main things. We minimize time to value, which means we make it small, find the smallest solution, make it quick, get it out there, start getting feedback. If you can monetize it, that's awesome. That's a bonus. But the idea is doing something small and getting it out there so we can prove that we're on the right track. We can start creating value quickly. Then we solve for need, and this is really, do we understand our business? Do we understand our users? Are we solving a problem that actually exists? And really trying to understand what are the problems and building solutions that help solve them. And then the last thing is accelerating a change. And I this is simply saying that change happens, right? I would lay money that over half of the folks on the phone are finding themselves in a brand new situation that they've never been in before by working remotely 100% of the time. And I would lay money that a lot of those folks also have a new role, which is teaching their children. These are all things. This is, change happens. The world changes around us. And when we excel at change, we embrace that and we understand it and we find the opportunities inside of it and don't let it freak us out because there's a lot these days. After I lay that framework out for folks, the next question I usually get is, well, okay, cool. Where does this fit? So where does the product mindset fit in my day-to-day work? And it's easiest to kind of break it down into how we think. So the product mindset changes the way that we think. It changes the conversations that we have around the table to focus on things like what type of value are we trying to drive? What are the outcomes that we're trying to achieve instead of what are the features that we're trying to build? So we go from features to talking about outcomes. So that's kind of that's the how we think and the conversations and the way that we approach the problems. And then there's the how we work. And that is your day-to-day, whether you are agile, whether you are waterfall, whether you are safe, scrumfall, whatever inside of there. None of those, maybe. It's how you do your job day-to-day. So product mindset guides how we think, and it guides the way that we work, and then we combine the two of those together, and that helps us meet our objectives, serve our customers, and build awesome products. Now, let's see. You've heard me use the word digital product a couple times, at least, so far in the first 5 minutes of our conversation. At 3Pillar, we view digital products differently than other types of software. Digital products are customer-facing products that are revenue generating, and they're fundamentally different because they do three things. One is that they have to self-fund. This means that they have to find a way to put value back on the table, whether it is cold hard cash in revenue, whether it is trust with your stakeholders, perhaps it's operational efficiencies. But the key of it is that it has to find a way to continue to fund itself so that we can keep doing what we're doing. So it has to be self-funding. It has to be chosen, and it has to be chosen often by the users. If you want a successful digital product, you have to have a product that people are going to choose to use over other things. And then last thing, products are never done. And this aligns with the fact that the world changes around us, technology changes, people's needs change. And so products never done means that we're always having to learn and adapt our product so that it continues to meet the needs of our users both today and tomorrow. Now, I recognize that not everybody on this call is building a digital product. Heck, some of you may not even be building products at all. And I can say that I've seen this work outside of product development and in the world at large. I mean, I put it on my kids all the time. And that's the beauty of a mindset, right? It can be applied to a lot of different things. So it doesn't have to be. Now, our focus in the rest of the conversation will be on digital products. That's kind of the scope of what we do. But I will try, as I get an opportunity, to open up the lens a little to help connect it for those that may not be building digital products. All right. So I'm going to ask you a question, and I'm going to ask Rafa to pop up a poll. And this time you actually get the answer. It'll give you a few minutes to answer it, or a few seconds. How many people can articulate at least one of your business outcomes in your organization? And I'll give you about 10 seconds to answer the question. All right, how are we doing on that? Okay. So that's about what I expected, if I could see it. I can't actually see the poll. There we go. Okay, so that's pretty close to what I expected. So people can somewhat articulate it. I'm actually surprised that there's not more no's. we do find that a lot of folks have trouble articulating their business outcomes. All right, and you flip back to the screen. So we do find that folks are challenged by identifying their business outcomes. When pressed, they can do it. Maybe they can kind of do it. They, somewhat can answer it. And this is compounded when they're not able to then take those outcomes and relate them to the product that they're building or the initiatives that they're running. And a lot of this is because they either don't fully understand it, can't fully articulate it, maybe it doesn't exist. But what happens in all of this, when we can't make those connections, is this leads to a lot of people building and doing things without any sort of compass. There's a lot of work being done and activity being made, but very little value being created or progress being made in our products, right? So outcomes become the foundation of building a digital product. Understanding those is super important. So without those, it's akin to driving a car without a steering wheel. So let's define it really quickly. Our friends at Forrester have done that for us very articulately. So Forrester defines an outcome as an achieved end state that can be verified through measurable results. They are generally tied to a top-funded initiative or funded top-level initiative. There we go. They are colored by the interests of the related stakeholders, and they are reached over time. And it's not a straight A to B journey. There's a lot of like messy middle in that journey. So this is how it's defined. They're fundamental to the success of your product team. I mean, ultimately, outcomes are what we want to accomplish from a user and a business standpoint, right? So if we look at it, it's the most important piece for the team. It tells them which mountain to climb. It doesn't tell them how to climb it, but it tells them that's the mountain we're shooting for. Now let's, as a team, figure out how we're going to climb that. And they're often related to your business goals, right? So if we look at the characteristics of a business outcome, they tell us why. They tell us what the end state is and what we're trying to achieve. They help us keep the teams focused. So it's really easy when you're in the weeds and you're just like working away at that day-to-day stuff, losing sight of where we're trying to go. So having the outcome statement and having the outcomes defined allows you to pull back periodically and remind people, this is where we're headed. So when those teams have questions about what they're developing, like which is the right way to do something, we could always go back to the outcome and say, okay, this is where we're trying to go, which is the best path to get us there. And understanding the outcomes is not a single person's job on the team, right? It's not my job as a product manager to know that. It's not, my stakeholders' job to know that. It is everybody's job to know that. And it is everybody's job to ask questions around that and really understand what those outcomes mean for the business and internalize that. They are related to business drivers like revenue, user growth, engagement. They do change over time, right? We excel at change these days, right? So as the business changes, as the user's needs change, your outcomes will change as well. And maybe you've made progress on one of them and you've decided to up the ante and go for another one. So what they don't do, outcomes don't tell us how to build this thing. We use the outcomes to inform the team, but the team decides how to build this thing. They don't tell you which is the right product to build. Your product strategy and your user research kind of helps you understand which is the right product to build. It doesn't include things like your feature and your roadmap, although it does account for it or play into it, and they don't stay the same. Let me give you some examples. All right, so these are actual outcomes that we have gone through with our teams and defined in some cases. So, and I've tried to obfuscate a little bit, but they were really good. The ones on the left are really good outcomes. They're super specific. They're super clear on what we're trying to accomplish. And you'll see some characteristics about them, and I'll get through them and we'll talk about it. But so for the first outcome, it's like by July of 2020, we aim to increase the number of completed transactions by 25% by making the checkout process faster and more transparent for our shoppers who are frustrated by the time it takes to purchase our products. So if you read through that, there's a lot of really good things in there. One, there's a time, like by July 2020. There's a measurable result, right? Increase the number of transactions. There's a solution by making the checkout process faster, and there's a reason, because people are frustrated by this. The second one says we want to drive our usage increases and grow our audience, especially capturing that medium to large station that we have very low penetration in. The station payments make up a lot of our revenue, 30%. So we want to make sure that those people are happy because that's important. So very similar framework here is that while there's no timelines on this one, but there's still kind of a reason and a solution and some measurable results in there. On the right-hand side of the screen are some other outcomes that we've had to massage and shape a little bit beyond what you see on the screen. So I want to launch 3 new products in 4 months for our salespeople. Cool. That does not help me very much. We need to have as many features as our competition. And I'll stop right there. If that is anybody's like goal or outcome, we need to talk, because having the same features as your competition is not a way to win market share, if you don't know that. So let's talk. There are better ways to get there. Or we want to reduce clicks on a video player. And this is probably the closest and needed the least amount of massaging. We just needed to add the other things like the timelines and so forth. So, but those are examples of not so good outcomes, the ones on the left-hand side. So if you look at the ones on the left-hand side, there is a pattern to them. And so this is one of the exercises that I use with our teams to help build this, because getting people to agree on what the outcomes are is not always easy. You have various stakeholders running around in different places, and getting them all together to agree on something is sometimes an effort. And I have an entire talk on just that. But for the purposes of our conversation today, building an outcome statement, there are 2 formulas that I tend to lean on. I lean on one more than the other, and I'll share them here with you. So the first one is that, and this is a statement, write it down on the wall and start mad-libbing it, right? So the business outcomes we're striving for is something. So you put your business outcome in there, and will be measured by something else. So I'm going to measure this by, increased daily active users by 25%, spitballing stuff out there at you, and achieved by building a certain product for a user. And the reason I don't use this one as much is because it makes me define the product and the user. I tend to go for the second one, also because the second one is time bound. And the second one is, by a specific date, we will do something. So we will increase user counts by 25% by creating a more fun experience, because our experience right now is terrible. Right? Terrible example. But if you go back to the previous example, you'll see this one is a great example. The first one, nope, there. By 2020, so there's your date. We aim to increase the number of completed transactions by 25%. There's your goal. By making the checkout process faster and more transparent for shoppers. There's your solution. And who are frustrated by the time it takes to purchase our products. And there's your why. This is why we're doing this. This is what we're trying to change in our users. So this outcome statement framework is in the handout sheet that I have for you guys afterwards. I fully encourage you to print it out, write it down, and stick it on a wall. And have all your team members stick it on the wall in front of them, because it's really good to remind yourself over and over again what your outcomes are and what we're trying to build. All right. So now that we've covered that, let's look at how, so we've covered the foundation. We've talked about building for outcomes. What are outcomes? Now let's talk about how we build upon it. If you remember 5 minutes ago, there were 3 principles to the product mindset that help us build for those outcomes. And the first one is solving for need. This means that we truly understand what our users are facing and what are the problems that we as a business are uniquely positioned to satisfy for them with our products or our process or initiatives or whatever we're building. Right? It's working with our users to understand their challenges and build solutions to solve those problems both today and in the future. And it's not just looking at users, it's understanding your business as well. So if you look back to the 3 characteristics of a digital product, one of those was that they must be chosen. How can you expect a user to choose your product if you're not solving a problem for them and solving a problem better than someone else might? Consumers today have so much choice in the digital economy. There's probably 4 different apps for anything you want to do these days. If you want them to choose your app, your program, your piece of software, you need to solve their problem better or faster or differently than someone else does. And in order to do that, you really need to understand what the problem is that the users are facing. So how do you do that? Well, We've identified 4 kind of characteristics that help us identify a true problem, or is this a true need that a person has? One is the customer recognizes it as a problem. They, whoops, there we go. They know that it's a problem. They have recognized it and said it. They feel pain, some sort of pain, whether it's monetary pain or process pain or whatever it is, but they feel pain. They've tried to solve it, but they may have failed. And they're willing to spend money, right? So they're willing to put money against it. If you have all 4 of these, then you have a problem. If you have less than 4 of these, you have a little bit of a battle to fight. Because for example, if a user does not acknowledge that it's a problem, then it's harder to tell them, hey, my software solves your problem. Like, but I don't have a problem. Why would I use your software? Or why would I use your product? If they don't feel pain, or if their pain is not big enough, then they're not pushed to do it. There is the whole silent majority phenomena where there are people that are in pain for one reason or another, and they just kind of put their heads down and keep moving. And they don't even think to pop their head up and say, hey, I have a problem, I need it solved, or to go look for something that'll help solve their problem. So if you don't have all of these, you have a little bit of a battle. It's not insurmountable. You've definitely got a bit of a process. So like, for example, out there in the market, there are a lot of folks that have capitalized on small problems. Instacart. Instacart has recognized that there is a need in the market for someone to do small shopping trips, right? So our office manager uses Instacart all the time because the office needs things. She can't get out to get it, and she needs it soon. So she will use Instacart to go get those. And they recognize the problem in the market and put a solution around it. TaskRabbit was great too because they found, they saw a need in the market for people that had these tiny little micro jobs that needed done, whether it's standing in line for somebody or hanging a picture or what have you. And there's a whole population of people willing to do those jobs. And so they recognize an opportunity and put a product in place to allow you to capitalize on that and to leverage that. So once we have now that we understand how to identify a need, what are the ways of getting at some of that data, right? So just understanding that there's pain and that people are willing to put money against that. How do we know that? How do we figure that out? There are some needs assessments and process tools that we like to use. One is data analysis, so analyzing the data, web analytics data, market data, things like that you might have. We use interviews and observations. So this is your user testing. These are your ride-alongs that you want to do ethnographic research and observe the people as they go about their day to see where the real pain points and the choke points are in their day. We've got personas, which are portraits of our users that identify motivations and frustrations and drivers. And then there's the use cases and stories of how people will use your product or how you believe that they will use your product in the future. So each one of these has a set of exercises, has a set of efforts behind it to really uncover the information. And I've included some of them in the packets. But what's important here is that once you've identified these needs, once you've identified these users, these outcomes, make them visible and review them often. I'm a huge believer of information radiators, getting things up on the walls around you, getting them visible so that you're reminded. We put personas on the walls. Our teams have the outcome statements on their desks with them, just so that you're constantly reminded of why are we doing this? What's the context that we're working in? A really great example out there these days of solving for a need. The personal finance genius Intuit knows that successful products solve for a need, and they're really good at this. They have a program called Follow Me Home, which for years has kept their staff apprised of the various user needs. So with the program, the staff members spend time with people in their homes and offices, well, at least previous to 6 weeks ago, would spend time with people in their homes and offices to better understand their lives and how they work. And we call this ethnographic research. I mentioned it before. By getting to know their customers so personally, Intuit started to notice that some of them were using Mint to tag things, expenses in really weird and unexpected ways. And as they really dug into it, they realized that a growing number of their customers were involved in the gig economy. So they were Lyft drivers or Uber drivers or shopping for Instacart or doing Airbnb, this kind of stuff. And they were trying to track their expenses for tax purposes in Mint. And Mint wasn't exactly built to do that. So they noticed also, because people weren't able to do that or they were tagging it weirdly, they were missing thousands of dollars in potential tax write-offs for these people. So Ben Blank, who is the innovation leader, was the innovation leader at Intuit, shared during Lean Startup Week a couple years back that these observations uncovered a new need in the market for them. Their customers needed an easy way to capture those write-offs. And who is better positioned to do this than Intuit and all of the financial software that they offer to their customers? So they built out and launched the QuickBooks Self-Employed product that you see on the screen here, that I am intimately familiar with and love using. It works really, really well for my needs as well. So this is a really great example, and they did follow-alongs, they did data analysis. So if you look at those, the 4 things I was talking about earlier, there was data analysis to say that they were missing these tax write-offs. They did the follow-along so that then they had the personas. And if you look at, in terms of the need, small business owners were missing tax write-offs. That's painful. That's like thousands of dollars for people sometimes. And they were willing to put money against it. I mean, they're already using Mint. So switching over to using something that was better suited for them was a no-brainer. So if we look at solving for need best practices, there's a couple things that we can kind of keep in mind. So user needs and business needs help us solve for needs. So understanding your user is just one part of it. You need to understand your business as well, because you can't build a product that your business is not suited to. You need something that you are uniquely suited to build to help these people with their problems. Everyone on your team should understand, restate, and check regularly these needs, right? So again, this isn't a one-person thing. This isn't a product manager that tells everybody. Everybody on your team needs to understand this information. We need to solve for today's needs. We can solve for tomorrow's needs, but it adds a lot of risk. So solving for today, not forgetting that tomorrow is going to exist, but we have a problem today that we need to start solving for. If you had asked me 9 months ago what today would look like, I would not have told you this. I would not have told you that I'm working at home full-time while trying to homeschool my children full-time. I would never have imagined that scenario. So if I had tried to build something, or if I had tried to plan something for today 9 months ago, I would have been way off the mark. So I have a problem today that I need to solve for. And I know that I can see a little bit of what tomorrow is going to look like, but there's an immediate need I need to solve for. So focus on solving for today's needs and understand that tomorrow will come, but what tomorrow looks like may be vastly different than what you understand today. Throw away all notions of what you think users want. You are not your user most times. I'll repeat that. You're not your user most times. I have to remind myself that on occasion. So talking to your users and understanding your users is really, really important. So put away what you think they want. If you think they want something, go test it. Go spend a little bit of time with your users and really validate that that's true. I know folks that have been in industries forever and ever and ever, and like, I'm a SME, I know this stuff down pat. But when you really start talking to the users, there are nuances and there are differences. I used to be that way. I used to be like, I got my users, I got this, nope, I'm cool. And I was proven wrong a bunch of times. So anyways, multiple data sources give a better picture. Just like satellites like to triangulate on 3 or more points, we like to triangulate our needs on more than 1 point. So if you have one of these, that's cool. If you've got 2, that's better. 3 or more, having 3 different angles really helps you understand the need and really helps you pinpoint what the needs are. And then the last thing is talking to real users regularly. Like, actually go out and talk to your people. Listen to your salespeople, listen to your customer support people, and then talk to those users or those intended users of your product to really understand what they're facing. And this isn't a like, hey, this is like, oh, let's just go talk to a couple people. This is easy. There's definitely a process behind it. But if you look at it in the spirit of the law, understanding your users and understanding what their problems are helps you build a better product for them. All right, so now that we've talked about solving for need, let's shift to minimizing time to value. And this is one of the harder ones for people to get their heads around, because minimizing time to value means you need to put your baby aside for a minute. Put your big, fancy vision aside and think about what you can do right now, the smallest solution possible to solve either your biggest problem, your biggest opportunity, maybe it's the biggest hurdle you have to figure out before all the rest of this can go forward. But finding a small, quick way to solve that and get it out there, to get feedback, to start generating value, to even potentially start generating revenue, right? So if you can monetize these tiny little pieces, that's fantastic. Not everybody can. But you want to spend, 2 to 3 months at the most getting something out there and testing it, whether it's paper prototypes or clickable prototypes or something like that, and not 6, 8, 10, 12 months. Because by the time you get to 8 and 12 months, things have changed. And you will have had to have adapted already and missed the opportunity to do so. Let me tell you a quick story. And I tell the story to every one of my trainings. This came from our former CTO, Jonathan, and he says that you start a project with a stack of dollars on the table. And as you progress through that project, you are taking dollars off of that stack. And at some point, you're going to run out of dollars. And most times, you are not going to be done with your project. And so then what? So you need to find ways to start putting dollars back on that table. And it could be actual dollars, like cold hard cash, revenue-based numbers. It could be trust, showing people that we are making progress. Look, this is what we've done so far. It could be operational efficiencies. Maybe you're not building a customer-facing digital product, but you're building some kind of internal system that's helping your people run better. You're building something focused on customer support and making your customer support people better at what they do. Those are operational efficiencies, and those still pay dividends. But at the start of a project, there is so much activity, right? There are stickers, there's meetings, there's Jira, there's just all this frenetic energy that's going on. But as the project moves on and the team kind of finds their rhythm and they start moving, activity starts to wane. And if you don't have anything to show for it, if you're not continually delivering value and showing people what you're doing, the stakeholders that are funding this are going to start asking, what's my money paying for? What are you guys doing? What's going on here, guys? So you have to find a way to minimize time to value, to show value quickly. And again, it doesn't have to be, revenue generating value. That's always wonderful. I love revenue generating value. But it could be, showing clickable prototypes and, hey, this is great progress. I have a fantastic story, actually, just thought of it. I was working with a customer who had a great idea and wanted to get that idea funded, but didn't have a lot of time to do it. So we spent about 3 weeks doing some really intense research and then 2 rounds of sketching and designing on a medium fidelity clickable prototype. Meaning I was able to click through the screens and kind of show them the end-to-end process, but it wasn't like super flashy and designed. Well, that was enough because he was able to take that into a meeting with a bunch of stakeholders and get the project funded. We did it in 3 weeks. I could have spent 6 months building him a product and then hoping to heck, they funded it. Or he could have just said, I can't do this and not get it funded. So spending that 3 weeks, minimizing time to value and getting it out there allowed him to then take it and get it funded so that we could build the bigger product, which was totally cool and so fun. So looking at minimizing time to value, this is launching one slice. This is why it's so hard. It means solving one problem that users have today with one piece of functionality, making it good enough. So let's not let the enemy or perfect be the enemy of good, I think is the saying. Get it out there quickly so that you can see how users are using it and improving upon it. The best example I can give you is an e-com system, and I'll use a blinds manufacturer, right? So you've got 200 different blinds with 50 options each. You've got payment options, you've got shipping. So you've got about 4 steps through the process. I could sit down and develop all the blinds and then go over and develop all the options and then go and develop all the payments and then all the shipping. And I'm looking at 6 to 12 months before I can launch anything. I'm looking at 6 to 12 months before I can test anything because nothing exists end to end. I don't even know if the steps all connect together, right? Instead, what I can do to minimize time to value is flip that and do just a little slice. So I'm going to go grab your 80% blind, the one that most people buy, and take the top 3 options out of that blind. So those are the ones that most people will select on there. Give you 1 payment option and 1 shipping option. And I can do that in, say, 3 months. So now I have an end-to-end process. I have now validated that all the steps will connect together and work together. I also have the 80% blind that I could release and let people start buying if I wanted to. A reality says most people aren't going to do that, but I could. I could put that 80% blind and start driving revenue back to my organization. But that's cutting that little slice. And it's hard for people because you're like, well, what happens if I don't get the rest of them? Like, well, you have to trust that will come. You are validating that this end-to-end process works. And you've now created trust that it works. And now let's go add the rest. And then each piece is done incrementally after that. It requires you to prioritize ruthlessly. We like using that term around here because it has you ask really hard questions. And that's kind of why I have this exercise in here for you guys. So prioritizing ruthlessly is a lot of times challenging for people because everyone has personal positions and some of them have, personal projects that they want to see get done. And there's a lot of emotion that gets involved in this type stuff. So what I have on here, and neither of these things on the screen are new to 3-pillar. They're not specific to 3-pillar. They are things that are used in the market today, but they happen to be my 2 favorite. So I thought I would share them. The one on the left is just a 4x4 set of quadrants. And generally we'll do something like impact over effort or value over complexity or something like that that allows me to kind of ascertain the value to the organization, whether it's impact or it's true value, and then the difficulty of the project or the feature. So whether it's effort, whether it's complexity or something that illustrates the how hard it's going to be. And then you can take a field of like 50 ideas or 50 features or 50 initiatives, whatever it is, and then plot them against this 4x4. And then it becomes really easy. Things that fall into the things that have a high impact or high value and they're easy to do, low complexity, low effort, those are no-brainers. Go do them. And you could stop your conversation right there. And you could say, okay, we'll take care of the rest later. Let's go do these. Or then you can go through and prioritize the rest. And so you take your high impact, high effort and have a conversation around those. And is there anything in there we want to pull in? Then we look at our low impact, low effort. And those are kind of like, okay, we'll fit those in somewhere. And then we take our low impact, high effort and put it in the backlog. Because if it's not having an impact and it's really hard to do, then why do it? At least why do it right now? There are so many other things in these other quadrants that need to be done first. So it's a really great way to kind of take the emotion out of it. Same thing with the matrix over here on the right-hand side. Right, so you can write down your objectives and then you can either put together criteria to judge against. You can do it by size, you can do it by effort. There's a lot of different ways to do these matrices and there are entire courses on how to do these as well. But the idea here is you take away the emotions, you take away the subjectivity, and you add some data behind it, and that'll kind of solidify your position and it makes it easier to have these conversations. It's not perfect, but it definitely helps have these conversations. All right, and then the last one, excelling at change. And this one is both hard and easy. So this is easy because change happens. We understand that we're going to work to embrace it. We'll work it. If you're an agile organization, you already understand iteration. It's hard because we're humans. Humans don't like to change. We are not wired for change. So when change happens, it's really hard sometimes. But the product is never done, right? So this is like excelling at change means that we're always going to have to adapt. But we also need to know, when do we change course? When do we hold? When do we have to let go and just let it happen? And then have the tools and processes to do it, right? Know when to hold them, know when to fold them, know when to walk away. That was playing in my house last night. It comes to mind. So the ways we can do that, right? So excelling at change, these are your best practices. Mindset is everything. recognize that things will change at some point. And there's a fantastic example of this that happened in my house just a couple days ago. My husband was struggling because his product owner had just made a bunch of really large changes on him, or had asked for something different. And we talked through it, and what had happened was they had originally had a very short time frame, 3 months, and they built a solution that they could build in 3 months that provided value. Great, awesome. That's what they did. At 2.5 months into that, they decided, no, wait, we've got more time now. We've got 8 months. So let's just scrap that and let's go do it the way we had actually wanted it to do. Like we had actually wanted to do it with the stuff that we wanted to do. And the initial conversation was, oh my God, I'm like, that's all wasted work. Holy crap, like I did all that work and now it's useless. But that's not the case. And that's the mindset shift you have to have. And that's the change you have to make in your culture. It's not wasted work. You needed to do that work to get where you were. And then everything from there is an improvement. All right. So it's not wasted work. You actually had to do that work. But you also have to be willing to set that work aside if the conditions tell us that we have to change. This is made easier if you have a plan in place before it happens, which is number 3. So if you have a plan in place and how you're going to react to change and how the conversations are going to happen, at least theoretically, it makes it a lot easier. So we're going to agree that when things tell us we need to change, and we talk about the standards of which change is possible in number 4, but when we start to see those winds shifting, this is how we're going to react. And these are the principles that we're going to hold true as a team. And you're going to work through that with your team. It's like, we're going to be okay setting aside work if it means we're improving on the product. And we're not going to view that as wasted work. We're going to view that as improvements, right? So having a plan in place, having an agreed upon standard for when do we change? Like, we're not going to change just because the wind is blowing south today. We're going to change because there is data, there are people's needs, there's technological changes, the socioeconomic or everything around us has changed. Okay. 5 and 6 are kind of in the weedsy type ones, which is having a repeatable process and QA automation. So having a repeatable process, we work in a way that allows us to change. So if there are things that we have to do over and over and over again, find a way to automate that, find a way to make that easier to repeat so you don't really have to think about it, and allow you to focus on the things that do require you to think about it. I recognize QA automation is not easy. Not everyone is lucky enough to have QA automation teams that allow them to do this. CI/CD for some continuous integration, continuous deployment, it's a pipe dream for a lot of folks. But in some cases, it's always good to try to work that direction if you can, right? So spend your time on the hard things and let the easy things be automated. Again, recognize it's not always easy. But we are continuously learning. We're rapidly adapting. We're willing to change work and abandon work if necessary. All right. All right. So the exercise here is not so much an exercise. Well, it's more of a discussion and a reflection, right? And this is in the worksheets that I'll send you. But the excelling at change, what you can do is sit down and think about, what does it look like today? What does change look like in our projects today? What happens? Someone gives me new requirements, everyone freaks out and their hair is on fire and like we all spin. Or, we actually sit down and have discussions and we talk about this rationally and we talk about trade-offs and so forth. How we decide to change. So we're gonna, go through and how we decide as a team we're gonna change. What steps do we take when we're changing? So kind of walk through that reflection. And then what do you want it to look like in the future? So let's start to put a plan in place. What should it look like in your organization? And then this one is one realistic thing we can do tomorrow to improve the way we respond to change. And this is asking you to think through, like, what can we do to make change easier in our organization? And these are all ones you could print out, sit down, write down, work with your team, work individually. I encourage you, if you have a team, work with them. And then the last thing is commit to it and then repeat it. Find a cadence that you want to like kind of repeat and work through this. And we'll talk through in a second, adopting this over time. All right. So the last thing we have here is, how do I apply this to my work today? So first of all, let's review building for outcomes is at the core of product mindset, right? Understanding our outcomes, understanding our goals. That's the first thing you can do. If you can't articulate those, let's work on articulating those. And then we can work through each of the principles: minimizing time to value, solving for need, and excelling at change. I have 2 exercises in the worksheets for you. First of all, go read the book. You'll have an e-copy of the book. Go read the book. It's meant to be read in about 4.5 hours or so, flying across the country. We were flying these days. But you have some time. I would assume that a lot of you are at home, so you've got some time. Grab a cup of coffee and have a good read. It's a quick read, it's an easy read, but it's an important read. So read the book, and then once you've read the book, come back here, and these 2 worksheets are 2 different ways. So the one on the left-hand side is kind of a step-by-step, how do I introduce this to my team? And there's some language and verbiage in there to help you we start using the languages: building for outcomes, excelling at change. We start aligning our people. We make it open, and we start to adapt it, because we know this isn't going to work for everybody exactly as it stands today, right? We're going to have to adapt a little bit. Align your goals and incorporate it. And then on the far right-hand side is a what now. So I want you, so this is a lot, right? So this is not going to happen overnight. This is an evolution, not a revolution. So culture change, all that stuff is hard in an organization, probably even more so now that we're not in a room together. So what I'm encouraging you to do is pick one of these. Minimize time to value, guys. Pick one of these that you think you can have an impact on in the next 3 weeks, 6 weeks, 9 weeks, whatever, and identify some steps you're going to take. And look at it, you don't have to do it in this order. You can, okay, I think we're really good about understanding users' needs. Let's see if we can get better there, and let's lock that down, and then go to the next one. But pick one at a time and go through that. And the last thing, I'm sure there's a bunch of you on the phone, or some of you on the phone, that are going, okay, this is cool, it makes sense. I get it, but I can't do it because this is just way too big. There's a lot here. We're not all dysfunctional. Well, keep in mind, it is an evolution. It's not a revolution. I said that before. This takes time. Start small. Think big, start small, modify it, iterate it. Pick one principle. Pick one thing you can change, whether it's a month or a week or whatever your time frames may be. It's never a straight line. I promise you. There's a great graphic somewhere from the messy middle where you've got a nice line with a big jumble of stuff in the middle, and then you've got a nice line on the other side. There will be ups and downs. You will figure things out. You will adapt. And last thing, and this is my one little plug today, we can help. 3Pillar can help. We do have workshops. This was an abbreviated version of a full-day workshop that we customized for our customers in helping them really identify some of the problems that they're facing and give them direct things that they can use. We've got coaching and teaching that we can do for you guys. We've got best practices. And there's a bunch of follow-on stuff like the worksheet and the links to the book and things that'll be in the email afterwards. So that's it. So that's our book. You'll get a copy of that as we send out the email later. So if there are any questions, let me go look and see if I can find the question portlet. So it's hiding. All right, so got about 6 minutes for questions. I've got one here. So someone says, all right, I understand excelling at change, getting processes and people lined up to be able to move on a new approach quickly. I got that. But I have a lot of developers that are stuck in their own ideas. They're super opinionated and they're really smart. So it's really hard to change their mindset. What do you suggest? That's a good one. And that's not at all uncommon. All right, so we got a lot of folks that are like, oh, I got this. I do this. Yeah, we're cool. I don't need to do anything else. Or I don't want to do anything else. How we do it today is great. I'm cool. We're making progress. So my answer is this: make them part of the process. Acknowledge as a group that change will come out of nowhere. Have them be the ones that help you define what the triggers are for when change happens, and help them define how we react to change. So when we're asking them, like, excelling at change, and we're like, okay, well, how do we do this? Abandoning work. Like, no one likes to abandon work. So make them part of the process and have them help you. Also, you can dig into some of the motivations that they have. There's a lot of reasons why people don't want to excel. Like I said, we're not wired for change. But in this case in particular, maybe they don't want their velocity numbers to be messed up. Maybe they're being judged on the amount of points they get done in a sprint, and by asking them to change or do something differently, it's going to impact that. So sometimes when you're trying to change this mindset, you have to align your incentivization. That's not the right word. The way that you look at people's progress. And so if you're judging people based on the velocity numbers that they put out, then that's all they're ever going to focus on. They're not going to focus on creating value for your organization. So once you understand those motivations, once you understand what those hurdles are, it'll be easier to help change them. And then understand, one of the other things is understand or make sure that they're not over investing in a feature, if that makes sense. Like if I spent 2 weekends away from my family to build a super complex feature, I don't want to let it go. Like I didn't waste. I spent all that time, personal time, because I thought it was valuable. And then you're asking me to set that aside. This is the problem that I have at my house right now. You're asking me to put that away. Like, but that was a lot of work. That was a lot of time away from my family. I don't want to put that away. So make sure that they're not over investing in the feature. Make sure that, we're also kind of maintaining some semblance of normalcy for them, and making sure that, while they are personally invested, we are keeping the overall objective in mind so that we don't over invest in certain things. So I hope that answered the question. There's no feedback in this thing, so I don't know if it answered it or not. I'm really hoping it did.
Lindsay, just one thing I wanted to say. I did put in the link to download the free ebook that we're offering in the chat. So if anybody wants to check it out there, they will also receive it in the follow-up email that we're going to be sending within the next day or two. But if they'd like to download it right now, they absolutely can.
Okay. And let me look. Is there any other questions? Nope, I don't see any others. So, all right, well, if there are any questions, Rafa, you and I can find a way for them to allow us to ask them. I'm sure this is a lot to kind of consume all at once. This is a lot of information to stuff into an hour, by the way. So
yeah, we actually just got a couple now, and I don't know that we have the time to actually get to all of them since we do have 3 minutes. So maybe Lindsay, you'd like to just reply through email?
Yeah, I can do that.
Right.
I can definitely do that. And if your question didn't get answered, we'll get to it, I promise.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Lindsay. We really appreciate your time. I think this was super, super insightful. And for the audience on the line, if you haven't already, please feel free to register for tomorrow's second training, Agile for the Distributed Teams. Thank you all so much for your time. And thank you, Lindsay.
Thank you for spending your lunchtime with me.
Bye, everybody.
All right, bye, guys.